Hey there, Alex here from Nintu, and in this video, I'm going to show you how you can set up templates and components that can be used and edited globally with Tailwind, WordPress, any page builder of your choice. Now, before getting into the templates and the config of these templates, I want to frame up the conversation and get us all on the same page. Tailwind is a massive advanced framework designed for projects such as maybe what I'm working on, or you're working on, or your mum and pup shop, but also for large scale websites, web apps, and mobile apps of the likes of Netflix, The Verge, and other massive corporate projects that might be out there. It's currently used by about 500,000 websites, which, to put that into some frame in the WordPress world, is about double the amount of sites that currently use Gutenberg, which it has about 250,000. If you're curious and you want to see some of the projects out there that are using Tailwind, always head over to their showcase page, tailwindcss.com/showcase, and there you'll find some of the latest projects. So why am I telling you this when we're talking about templates? Well, because with new tech comes change. You might have to shift the way you think about working with your client projects to get the best outcome for both of them, as well as you in the way that you interact with them, the amount of time you spend on a project, and the amount of value they get out of that project. Some trains of thought that we used to work with, especially with Bootstrap and some of the older CSS frameworks, or some of the more generic WordPress frameworks, use things like BEM, CSS variables, that aren't needed when using such an advanced framework like Tailwind. And if you're trying to shift the way that you currently work in this new tech and mold it to the old ways of doing things, you're definitely not going to get the best outcome. See, when I first started a web agency, my process was very much just figure it out as you go. You're good friends with the customer, everything would be fine. And the day-to-day of these deliverables would kind of look along the lines of, I'll build part of a site, or maybe the base of the whole site. I'd send it to the client. They'd give me feedback. They'd send it back to me. I'd make the edits, and we'd continue this back and forth until one of us got sick or we got to a point that we both agreed. As the agency grew and I got to work with larger customers, things changed a little bit. See, with larger clients, they spend months, like almost up to a year, building out their whole brand and system and type and colors, all the way down to how things are angled, where the logo can be positioned, how deep is your drop shadow, how rounded is a border. And these are things that are really defined and locked in up front that can't be changed through the project that I'm working on with them, but also through any other project that's being worked on, whether it's a flyer, an ad, a video. It's all well determined and defined up front. And this was when I started to learn the importance of having a proper project methodology behind the way I worked, and having well-defined and well-established steps for every new customer that I onboarded to really ultimately give them the best result, also save my sanity and not have that constant back and forth working on a project. Now you see, Tailwind in its design has this in mind. It's something that has been truly tried and tested over the last couple of years to be able to work for both your mum and pup shop, us as little agency owners, but as I showed you before, for massive corporate global projects as well. So if you are looking to use Tailwind and Winden with your WordPress project and you're running an agency, make sure that you've got the business side ready before you dive into your first project. If you're working on it for a personal project, there's a couple of things that you might want to do before you get started. I would suggest that you think about defining upfront as much of your brand as possible. And at a minimum, think about what typography you're going to use, what colors you're going to use, and the variations of your logo. If you want to take things a little bit further, I'd look at prototyping the first version of your website on something like Figma, as it will give you a lot of the changes that you want to make to the Tailwind framework up front before you start working on the project. Now, if If you're not quite ready for any of this, it's totally okay. It took me a little while to get to a framework like Tailwind, probably the likes of 5 years of running an agency before I was quite ready. And it's okay to use other frameworks. This is not going away anytime soon. As I mentioned in earlier videos, Tailwind is not dependent on any plugin, WordPress upgrade, or change. It lives platform agnostic, so you know it's going to be around for years to come, regardless of what happens in the WordPress scene. But being platform agnostic means that it's a set of skills that you can learn, grow, and keep throughout your web journey, regardless of if you continue working with WordPress or if you start building web apps or mobile apps, and change and grow your agency business. Alrighty, now that we're on the same page and we've got all that aside, we're ready for a little bit of a challenge and a little bit of a change. And I'm going to walk you through the different methods that you can use to set up reusable global templates and elements using Tailwind on your WordPress website. Now, there's 4 core ways of setting up Tailwind to allow for global customization, templates, and really a lot of scalability. I'm going to walk you through these in the order of most scalable to least scalable. What I mean by scalable is essentially how easy it is for you to go back, figure out what you created in the first place to make that modification. There are some use cases that it's very easy to do, but if you then work on 7 different projects, come back to this one, unless you remember what you did, it might be a little bit more difficult to go and figure that out. In a similar way to if you just created a CSS variable, worked on other projects, came back, might not remember what that variable was named or how you had configured that variable. First method is to customize the default Tailwind configuration, either by modifying it or extending it. Now, just looking at the modification side, you can do this at any time as long as you've been using just the Tailwind framework. As an example of this, you might want to change all of your fonts to a different font, all of your blue color to a different color, all of your spaces to a different space scale, or all of your font sizes to a different font size. All you would need to do is define the different class names here, and then tell Tailwind what you want the new value to be. You can do this for any component within the framework, and it, for the most part, makes CSS variables kind of redundant, at least in the way that we've been using them in the past. You can also extend the framework. The way this works is it essentially keeps all of the core engine and system intact, and it adds additional functionality or utilities on top of that. See it here, for example, with the colors P for primary or N for neutral. See with Nintu, I wanted to keep all the default Tailwind colors in case I ever needed to use them in the future, but I also wanted to have my own primary and neutral colors that I could use, and also other people could change if they wanted to use the templates. All I needed to do here was plug them in, tell Tailwind it's one of the color elements, and then it adds all of my colors to the entire engine. So I've defined them once here, and they're applied to backgrounds, text, borders, or any other place colors may be used within the framework. There are some rare use cases for CSS variables. And in this case, I've used them alongside the Tailwind framework to create a fluid type scale. So essentially what I've done here is I've told Tailwind, look, keep all your base utility classes because I've already built a lot of the website and I don't want to go back and change all the class names. But instead of giving them Tailwind values, I want you to give them my variable values. So you can see here I have font size XS. That's a variable of font size -XS. If I go look at what does that actually represent, and I go into my CSS file here, I can see my font size XS has a clamp value. I've also done the same for spacing so that I have a fluid space scale, but I've decided to keep the default or keep this max width scale. This pretty much applies to any class, any utility within the framework. It can be very, very quickly modified and redefined, and is for the most part the reason why you don't actually need to use CSS variables with Tailwind, because if you wanted to change all of the type options or all of the color options, you could just tell the framework, hey, use everything that you've got, keep all the same naming conventions, and just apply these new values to them. This is the easiest way on a global scale. Looks a little bit complicated off the bat, especially with all the code. Trust me, as someone who's not a developer by trade, once you figure it out and do it one time, it's super, super easy. They also have really, really good documentation, which outlines all the different class names and how you can configure and change those variables straight from their website. Alrighty, moving on to method number 2. And this is to create components that you're reusing throughout your site. Specifically, this method is for static components. Now, let's say you have call to action, footer section, an FAQ section, a card that you're reusing over and over and over again. The best way to build this out is by using your page builder's templating system. As an example with Bricks and the Nintu site, I've got this FAQ here that I reuse, I think, in like 10 places on the website. I don't want to edit it 10 times every time I need to make that change. So I have it just set up as a template. See here in the structure, it's just set up as a template section from Bricks, and I've selected the right one. If I then go and have a look at that template, I can go here, modify it, make that changes, and it's applied every page that I would need to use that component on. This is really easy for components that have static content and that you're not going to have many variations of. The third method involves using your page builder's template engine, in our case Bricks, as well as potentially additional custom post types and additional taxonomies. Now, I'm going to walk you through the way I have it set up here with Nintu, where I have about 110 pages generated dynamically off of 3 templates. First is the overview page. This is where I have all of my different templates. When I click into these each go to a different category, right? So if I click on blog templates, take me to a page, all of my blog templates. But not only is it just my blog templates, it's my blog templates and multiple post types, my core templates and my essential templates. I'm calling all of these templates, but this exact same thing would apply if you're creating, say, a pricing card or an articles page or just a normal blog. If I click on this, I then have my singular template, so my one post, and below that, I then have, once again, a repeated grid with all of the different templates from the same category. Below that, I then have all of the categories again, and below that, I have my call to action, which is repeated on every page. So I'm going to walk you through how I have this set up to give you a bit of an idea of what my templates section in Bricks looks like. And this may help with your organization and structure too, is like this. And for the whole site, I have 18 templates that I actually use. And each of them are named according to what I'm using them for. So you can see I have section templates, global templates, element templates, which is like a specific thing like a button, and archive templates. This is quite similar to the way projects are built out using tools like, or front-end frameworks like Vue or React. Well, they'll have different components that can be customized, or the content can be customized. They're reused over and over again. So going back into my blog template or my category. Yeah. So I have a category which pulls in the different posts across different post types. And I have, I think, like 20 categories at the moment. So it's quite a lot of pages. If I go look at the way that this is then built out, I think it's this one here. I can see that I have custom post type data that's used for the text. So in this case, it's pulling in the category name. I then have a repeater, which is pulling in the posts of the post type that I want it to, organized by the category. Scroll down all of them. I have a second repeater with the same settings, but the other post type. If I wanted to combine it into one, I could just have one with both both post types, but I like them being separate. Then scrolling down further, I have another template element with all of my categories. Jump into this, you can see here, it's just a template. Below that, I have another template, which is my FAQ. Again, just another template. And below that, I have a last template, which is my main call to action. So although it sounds complicated, I can edit all of these pages very, very quickly by customizing 2 different post types or 2 different query loops that I could simplify if I wanted to, and 3 core templates. And then these are used again throughout the website. Jumping one level deeper to the individual post type, I've then got that post type pulling in its content, related templates, and categories grid once again. And if we were to look at my single template and what that looks like, see it's here with a lot of custom taxonomies, but essentially I have the title up here, the actual content, which gets populated through bricks, but is set as just a post content data source bricks. Below that, I have another template grid that's just pulling in the related posts template. If I was to look at what that looked like in bricks, it's just like this. It's one custom query that I edit, and then again, template, category template, and my call to action category template. That is solution number 3. And this is something that you'll probably use fairly often and can be expanded as much as you want. There are a few things that you need to get comfortable with when using this. The first is Bricks templates engine and the way it works and the way you can target different categories or different pages. Second is a custom post type tool and a taxonomy tool. Tools like ACF would work well, CPT UI, pods. My plugin of choice is Metabox, and the reason I use Metabox is because it's one plugin that does everything instead of multiple plugins, and it's also the one that I've had the least compatibility issues when using Open Lightspeed servers, which, at least in our use case, has dramatically increased load times. On to method number 4. Now, method number 4 works in a similar way to CSS variables, but instead of you defining all the variables, you define the utility classes of Tailwind. It's something that's built into their engine, and it works really well in 2 use cases. 1, you don't want to use the template system and custom post types to create elements like pricing cards or borders or shadows, and you want to define them all in one place using your utility classes. 2 is you're using other plugins that pull in their own styles, and you want to still use your whole Tailwind system to style them. A good example of this is you might be using a grid plugin. The plugin does all the work to generate the grid, does the custom query for you, but the styles of the cards it generates aren't in line to your Tailwind styles. And you don't really want to have to go into that plugin settings, make all the changes, and then to your plugin settings and Tailwind, make all the changes, and then align up all the brand things, and maybe you do make a change in the future, and you'd have to go back twice to edit and figure out what's where. So you do this through what's called layer classes, or layer functions. And they are defined in Winden settings under the base CSS file. Got a few here as an example. Simply write @layer components, and then you define your class. I could do, for example, .card-primary, and then inside of here, I define the utility classes that I want to use. So I could do @apply, so I want to use the apply function, and then I would say, all right, for the card primary, I want my border to be rounded-XL, which is like the very rounded class. I want shadow-XL, which is a big shadow with Tailwind. And I want it to move up a little bit when I hover. So I could go hover, translate, y-1. And that would then apply these utility classes to everything that has card primary class that I've applied. The downside to this is that you're leaving the core methodology of Tailwind, where everything is defined in a utility class, very easy to identify upfront what is styling what. Part of the whole principle of the framework is that you can quickly see on the front end, when you go back into your builder, I've used this class, I know exactly what it styles, because every class only has one style, right? It doesn't apply multiple things. But this does allow us to create combined classes into one, and it also really helps when we want to style plugins and functions and tools and elements that we can't directly add a class to. So I could go back to my grid, I find whatever the class name of that grid is, I add it here as an apply function, and I give it my Tailwind classes, and I'm good to go. The two examples I do have here are with the main button from Bricks and the main form field from Bricks. So I wanted the main button to be my button with my colors, and it's because that button is reused in different forms. It's used in a bunch of different places with Bricks Builder, and I didn't want to have to change the style of that each time. But also from a template perspective, others can copy the templates, and if the button is ever used in its default state, it will pick up the Tailwind colors. Similar thing here applies for the form field. I wanted the form field to look a certain way, so I used a layer component with apply to style that element. Essentially, they are the 4 core ways to how you can create global, reusable, editable components and templates while using Tailwind and Bricks Builder, and not have to go back and make all the little changes or edit every single class when you do want to make one of those changes. It is a little bit more complicated than just creating a template and using the default system and the built-in colors and global styles that your different page builders or plugins come with. The upside to this, though, is it brings massive speed improvements and almost infinite scalability, because you're already using all of these classes throughout your project. You're never ever really reloading any additional CSS, and you can continue to build and build and build without having to worry. I'll give you one little last use case and example, and that's with our Nintu website here. It's a website that has a lot of custom stuff built into it. It has an e-commerce store on top of it, an affiliate platform on top of that, a membership platform on top of that, and over 100 templates that each have their own unique styles. And just about every tracking script a good marketer could possibly want, from all the different pixels to session tracking through Full Story, Google Analytics. And I still am able to achieve pretty consistent 200 to 400 millisecond load times for new users visiting the site. Having a quick look at Nintu, so our website's load times through GT metrics. I haven't changed any of the default settings. I'll speed this up so that you can see the result, but I won't cut so that you can see that it's actually doing the work. There we go. So I've received a score of B for performance. It's definitely a few things that we could do to improve, but the most important thing, if you look at the largest content for Paint and the average load time, see it loaded super fast for the end user. And again, this is on a site that has pretty significant amounts of high-res images, additions, trackings, and plugins on. You can see that our base page is actually 7 megabytes, but of that, the large majority is just pictures and our Java. That's pretty much it for the video. Thanks for sticking around. It was a long one. I hope I've answered all of your questions regarding templating, components, global editing with Tailwind, Bricks Builder, WordPress, and potentially other page builders too. Please let me know if you have any questions. These videos are always generated out of community questions and ideas that you guys give me. So bring them forwards, don't shy away. Always around, whether it's on socials, through the chatbot, or email. And otherwise, subscribe if you want to. Thank you again for your time and watching, and I'll see you in the next video.